Welcome to Potentiality, a space for big questions, deep conversations, and shared wisdom around the most meaningful thing we do as human beings, which is how we parent and educate the next generation. I am delighted to introduce our guest today, who has spent nearly 2 decades doing something that sounds straightforward, and yet it is anything but helping families navigate one of the most consequential decisions of a young person's life without losing their clarity, their calm, or their financial footing. She is the founder of College Ready, a certified college strategist, and the best-selling author of How to Send Your Student to College Without Losing Your Mind or Your Money. She was named the 2026 Global Educational Consultant of the Year, has been featured on Fox, CBS, and NBC, and appeared alongside Damon John on Next Level CEO. Her students have earned millions in scholarships and gained admission to top universities across the country. But what drew me most to this conversation is the philosophy. Shelley Howard does not believe the goal is to get your child into the best college. She believes the goal is to help your young person become someone who knows who they are, trusts their own path, and steps into their future with agency rather than anxiety. And in a season of a young person's life when the pressure to perform, to compete, and to conform is at its most intense, that is a radical and necessary stance. This is a conversation about college today, yes, but it is really a conversation about self-worth, about what we teach our children when we lead with fear, and about what becomes possible when a young person is seen for who they actually are and is guided to become their true self. Welcome to Potentiality, Shelley. I've been really looking forward to our conversation today.
Thank you so much for having me. I look forward to sharing with your guests exactly where we're headed with this generation.
Thank you. Such a timely and needed conversation. So, thank you for sharing this space with me. I really want to ask about your path into doing the work that you do. And you describe it as a work that began with your own children. What was the moment you realized that was most families were doing was not working when you were dealing with this for your own children? And what was it that needed to fundamentally shift from which College Ready was born?
Wow, that's a whole podcast in just your first question. So I'll give you the condensed version.
Okay.
So it all really started when my son, my oldest, I have four, so two boys and two girls, and the really of the idea of how we're going to navigate college stemmed from my own upbringing. My parents were entrepreneurs and neither went to college. And I remember during my own high school days asking them, do you think I should go? One said yes and one said no. And so it was a house divided all the way back then. And I knew that was so stressful. It was stressful for me. My parents didn't want to make a mistake, but they didn't really know. It was a different generation, a different time. And now we look at here's another generation and another time. And so when my son was in eighth grade, he came home from middle school about spring and he says, Mom, I know exactly what I want to do and exactly where I want to go to college. I'm like, what happened at school today? He said, the high school counselor came in and said, we need to pick our classes. I'm like, okay. And so how did that turn out? He says, well, I decided I want to be a brain surgeon. I want to go to an Ivy League school. And I was like, okay. And so he grabs his snack and he starts walking out and he turns around and he says, will you help me? And I was like, oh man, now it's my responsibility. And I'm not sure that I'm the right person for the job. So we went and talked to his future high school counselor. And she very cautiously said, why do you want to be a doctor? They don't make money anymore. And he looked at me and I looked at him and I'm like, I guess we're not going to get help here. And so we excused ourselves. And I really, at that time, that was the moment I realized all of this was going to rest on my shoulders. And so I went back to school and then I went back to school again and I became an independent certified college consultant. I started touring 25 colleges a semester. And that young man did exactly what I recommended. When he applied to college, he applied to 12 schools, got into 11, 7 full ride offers, went to Harvard pre-med for free. As soon as word got out, College Ready was launched. There was not a family who did not want the same opportunity for their own child.
That is an amazing story. And so my understanding that is he did follow that path and he became a brain surgeon. Is that true?
So, kind of.
Okay.
He got into Harvard, got his first B, and he was like, wow, these kids are really smart. I don't know if I want to be this competitive. And then I said, well, what else do you want to do? He's like, really nothing. So I said, then you need to stay the path, stay the course. He then applied to med school, went on to UC San Diego Medical School. While he was there, or in between there, he was playing in a soccer match at the park for fun and blew out his MCL and ACL in his knee. Had to go see an orthopedic surgeon who absolutely impressed him to no end, to the fact that he is now an orthopedic surgeon. So one little divergent there, but yes, he just finished 15 years of education after high school, and he is just graduated from UCLA as the chief resident orthopedic hips and knees.
That is incredible. And so he got very, very close. That surgery was his thing, but in a different
Yeah.
field. And it
Yeah.
really coincides with my son's story because music has always been his thing. And I started him with the piano, and he fought it tooth and nail for about a year until we gave up. But then in middle school, pretty much similar to your child's story, the guitar found him. And so he's a musician, very successful, multi-million fan base, but the guitar is his instrument. So sometimes they come very close, but then some tweaks needed down the road. Charlie, as I'm listening to you, and I can't really imagine our audience not wanting to know the magic formula. Like, how did you get your son into Harvard pre-med school for free? But we're going to talk more about that. But there's more to this story. This is not, as I said in my introduction, about getting your child into the best college. And I'm wondering, you've been doing this for 19 years. If I'm not mistaken, College Ready is now in its 19th year. And I'm curious how your understanding of what families actually need has shifted over that time.
That's such an important distinction because, 2 generations ago, college was not mandatory. A generation ago, college was something every parent felt they had to do for their child for them to be successful. So that generation was pushing students into college, regardless, they didn't have a clue what they wanted to do. And they just said, just get a degree. Any degree will make you more successful. Well, that generation ended up going to college and maybe graduating, didn't use their degree, they were in debt, and they're like, I don't want that for my child. So now we swing it the other pendulum the other way. And now they're saying, does my child really want to go into debt? Is that necessary? Is college the only path? Maybe we should look at some other things. Maybe it's trade school. Maybe it's AI. Maybe it's entrepreneurship. And so it's a very unique place because every generation has its challenges, right? I mean, when the calculator first came out, all the teachers said, everybody's brain's going to turn to mush. They're never going to understand how to do math. And here we sit with the calculator and a lot of brilliant people. And then we had the cell phone. The cell phone came out. Nobody had any clue that we'd be walking around with a computer in our hand. And they're saying, oh, this is going to make our children so lazy and it's going to have such a bad impact. And now we find ourselves again with AI and people are saying, oh my gosh, it's going to change the trajectory of the world. And we're in a total tailspin. What I love to help families understand is this is not the first time we've had a new technology or a new thing enter into our world. And you do need to be mindful and understand how it's going to impact our future. But it's not only going to help people be more productive. It's actually going to help people have different jobs.
Mhm.
30 years ago, you had the same career for 20 years. Now, these young people are changing careers every 2 to 3 years. They're
Mhm.
moving at light speed. And so, if you think of college in the way we did a generation ago, it's so hard to understand why these kids are so stressed out and overwhelmed and feeling anxious. And the parents are like, but I just don't want to make a mistake. And so there's almost a paralysis right now where they're
Mhm.
frozen, they're overwhelmed, stressed out because there's so many people who are running around chasing boxes. I just got to check this one more box and I'll get into my dream school. But it's not what it's about. Colleges want to know, who is your child, what matters to them, and what have they done to prove it.
Mhm.
Isn't that the same thing we want for adulting?
Mhm. Yeah. Absolutely. And thank you so much for the clarity that you're bringing into this conversation because we are in the age where 4 year degree, 5 year degree, and by the time that we get the degree, oftentimes it is obsolete. And I find it with a lot of my clients that I work with, especially if it's not an aligned path for them. So, really, that understanding becomes more important than the degree itself. And the technological unemployment is a real thing. I've been really studying that field for a number of years, way before AI was even this present in our lives as it is today. But like you said, it's not that our youth will be without a job; they will be holding a qualitatively different job. And so what the preparation for that job means is shaping, as we speak, because a lot of jobs that they will be holding do not exist yet. So they will be shaping it. So the type of an education that they will need to receive, like you said, it's moving at the speed of light. So the adaptability, the agility, the flexibility, really that the ability for the quick response and curating their own curriculum becomes so much more important than having a degree from a set academic, diploma that may or may not be relevant 5 years, 4 years from now. And I know that's not true for every career. So I would like us to unpack that a little further. But before we go there, I want to ask this question because this fact fascinates me. You require every student to complete 200 hours of community service in order to work with College Ready. That is a significant commitment in a season when students are already overwhelmed. What happens inside a young person when they give that consistency? And why do you think that's a non negotiable in order for you to actually offer your services?
Wow, again, such a brilliant question. So, why is community service important? For obvious reasons, the student is looking outward instead of inward. So, when they stay just considering themselves, right, completely focused on who they are and what matters to them, and just really not looking at the world as a whole, they lose sight of what's
Mhm.
going on out there. The other thing that I have found is this generation is struggling more than others to figure out what career they want, what college major, what trade school. They are in a state of paralysis because when they look at their cell phone every day, it's everybody's best day. So they look at it and they're like, well, I'm not as good as them, and I'm not as pretty as her, and I'm not as smart as this. And they're competing with an unrealistic competition by just picking up their cell phone. And why is that important to then serve their community? It takes the element of failure away from being so terrifying for them. Because when they are serving another human being, that just means that if they weren't there, nobody may be there. And so they're better than nothing. And so they're like, phew, finally, I can just be myself. I can be silly. I can be fun. I can be playful. I can be intelligent. I can be whatever I want to be. And this person is benefiting from me be just being me.
Mhm.
So I find that when they are genuinely doing something they're passionate about, something they advocate for, that not only are they getting to know themselves better, they're getting to know the world better, And all of that equals understanding how to adult. I tell this all the time, but college is not the end game. College is the stepping stone to their future. And so if they're focused all of this attention and the stress on college, they're losing sight that this is really about their future. So if we were creating the best human beings that we could, would we not want them to be empathetic? Would we not want them to have leadership and desire to make people's lives better? Community service is really about making people better, people they serve and the person themselves. So from my perspective, if everybody did a minimum of 200 service hours in something they loved, not another checkbox, not another grudge, would they not be happier human beings? That's my theory. I just think our world would be a little happier if everybody really understood what it was like to make another person's day better.
So beautiful. I've had a number of podcast episodes around AI disrupting every field, and especially the field of education. And every time those guests would be speaking to the exact same thing that you just spoke to, that in the age of exponential technologies, those profoundly human capacities and skills are even more valuable. And that's exactly what I think our responsibility is as educators, to cultivate that in our youth. I want to go back for a quick moment about that going to going inward. You just mentioned that in your response, and I'm really curious how you hold that tension between, this kind of a two major things in the work that you do, because your work is to help students stand out in a competitive applicant pool, sorry, and yet they need to go inward according to your philosophy first before they actually can do that and do it authentically with integrity and probably better than if they were just to follow the path for the sake of competition. So I wonder, Shelley, how do you hold that tension between helping a student be seen by institutions and helping them see themselves?
It actually fits so beautifully together because when a college is looking for the perfect candidate, they're going to look GPA, test scores, community service, leadership. They're going to look at the deliverables. And then they're going to be like, wow, there's a lot of them. Our competition is still massive. How will we decide out of all of these candidates that are similar GPA, test score, community service, how are we going to decide? Well, who is going to be successful here? Is it the student who did nothing but play games in their family room and didn't talk to people? Or is it going to be the student who served their community, who led others to create change, who studied hard to be a good student? It's an easy way for a university to understand. But if a student doesn't know themselves, it's impossible for them to tell colleges why they should be chosen. So one has to come before the other. If the student has no idea, if I ask them, what are you passionate about? And they shrug, I don't know. What's your favorite subject? I don't know. What's your favorite? I don't know. How is that child, that teenager, ever going to apply to college in a competitive environment? And even if they're so smart that they get in, how are they going to survive socially? How are they going to feel when somebody is getting a better grade? How are they going to act when it gets so competitive that one student's going to get an A in the class? It's helping them to really have resilience. And you can't build resilience if you don't know who you are and how well you can handle the good, the bad, and the not so easy.
Mhm. So, what I hear you say is preparation for college, which in itself is a stepping stone. It's not the end game, but the preparation for it starts way before the last couple of years of maybe high school or maybe high school in its totality. Because building the capacities that you're talking about, they don't happen within 1, 2, or 3 years. This is really like a longitudinal process. And this is really all about their internal, more like a human capacities that we're talking about. And so I'm really curious, and I know that's the work that I do with wholeness education through coaching and many other things that I offer. But I think this is more of a newer, I think, awareness as a collective that we're putting more emphasis and more focus on that. And among the kids that I work with, there are still many that don't know who they are. They're 17, 18, 19, sometimes in their 20s. And some of them have already been to college and have the degree, and they still don't know who they are. So I'm really curious, Shelley, when a student arrives into your program without a clear sense of who they are or what they want, what is your first move? How do you guide them through that process?
So good. And this is probably nothing you would think of, parents, but we go straight to financial literacy.
Mhm.
If a student doesn't have a concept of what it costs to live as an adult, they live in a very bubble. They're living in a world with a bubble surrounding them. And honestly, as a parent of two daughters and two sons, I know I've built bubbles. I wanted to protect them and I wanted to make sure that they were okay. But as soon as I realized that there was no concept of what $100,000 a year education was going to get them in return for their time, money, and effort, I realized
Mhm.
that's because they don't know. And if they
Mhm.
don't know, how will they know what they want in the future? I tell this story, I think it's such a great way to represent it. Parent comes to me and says, I want you to meet with my daughter. I'm very concerned about her. She has her heart set on NYU and she wants to be a botanist. Did you know it's $100,000 a year to go to that school? And I'm not paying for it. And I said, okay, sure. So she comes in. I start talking to her and I say, your dad tells me that you really like plants. She goes, what? What are you talking about? And I said, well, he says you want to be a botanist. She goes, well, yeah, I want to save the environment. I said, so wait a minute, you don't really want to plant plants, you want to save our environment. She goes, yeah, of course I do. And I was like, wow, how is that for a total disconnect between what he heard and what she wants? She wasn't able to articulate what it was that she wanted to do until I gave her that platform to say, I'm curious, help me understand what is meaningful to you. Because they do usually, not 100%, but they usually have something they can offer when I say, what would you like to see changed in the world? It is a generation of, I want this to be, this is not okay. This is da da da. And I'm like, so what part are you going to play? And they're like, I don't know. And I say, well, if it's important to you, do you want to figure that out? And so it's giving them opportunity to not stay in little boxes, little silos of a college major or a career, but really unpack it layer by layer as to the gifts and talents and core values that they come with. And then if we focus on that and then give them the opportunity to impact something meaningful, they usually get really darn close to what it is they want to do.
Mhm. So it's really about life coaching, which is something that I do, is really helping them connect with something bigger than themselves. And that helps them almost find their purpose. What is it that they want to contribute to in a professional sense or through their professional path? What world problems do they want to solve? Right. And I think most kids, and this is what I find from my experience, like you shared as well, they come pretty close because all of them have that seed of intelligence, the passion towards something, which in this girl's case was not through a botany degree, right? But there are other ways to save the environment or contribute positively to the environment is really helping them curate that path of what does it mean for their contribution. And that's what I always ask. In what ways do you want to contribute? Now, who you want to become? How do you want to contribute to the world, right? What drives you?
Yeah. And as soon as it's their why, they're
Mm-hmm.
on fire. They're so
Mm-hmm.
excited. They can do just about anything. It's just helping them get to their why, I think, is the hardest part that I think they struggle with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. And that's why you and I do the work that we do, because see them light up once they discover that why, that's just priceless. Absolutely, in my opinion. It writes human stories. And ultimately it writes our collective story as a humanity. That's how I look at things. I'm really curious, Shelley, and this comes from the experiences of many of my clients, as well as my own story growing up, because it was very clear for me who I wanted to become, but my family had a completely different opinion about it. And I ended up getting the degree that my family wanted. Being brought up in a very traditional culture, especially as a girl, you just do not question those decisions. They're just made for you. So I'm really curious when a parent's vision for their child's future and there's the student's own vision for their life or their professional path are in direct conflict. How do you navigate that? I don't know if you have any stories like that.
Wow. I would say every fifth family I talk to has some kind of that story. And what it comes down to, usually the parent doesn't want to mess up. The
Mhm.
parent feels so heavy that they want to give their child the very best life, the one they didn't get, the one they wish they had, the one. It usually comes from a wonderful place. I have learned it usually doesn't
Mhm.
come from a parent who is just trying to be mean or hurtful. And so I go into the conversation with that thought of how can I help this parent have a voice and still allow the child to understand their role and have a voice. Because when both of them are listening, not communicating, when they're listening to each other, they're hearing for the first time what is important and what is being said. So, as I am the neutral party, if a parent says, yes, my child has a choice of being an engineer, a lawyer, or a doctor,
Mhm.
which one do they want to be? And I will be the voice and saying, so just to be clear, that's their only choices. And the student is like, ah, like you can just see this whole presence of like somebody said it out loud. And they said, well, what else is there? That happens all the time because
Wow.
they're so concerned that that child will do a irresponsible career that they don't think is going to provide for them. And then they will feel that they haven't been a good parent. But as soon as I can help the parent understand, here's your child's gifts and talents, and they're going to be amazing. Here are all the careers that they could be. Here's how much money or prestige or value that they can give the world. The parent is like, wow, I never
Mhm.
thought of that like that. So it's really having both sides be on the same page and not feel in conflict, because I really do believe that at least for the parent, they come with a desire to help their child succeed. And that I think is missed by the teenager
Mhm.
99.9% of the time.
Yes, it really comes from a place of love, actually, and wanting to provide that security and safety and a respectable, even a prestigious career. And I was not given those three choices. I was given one, engineering, and that's the degree I got. And I cried through those 5 years. I got my diploma with really high degrees, but I did not work as an engineer for even a year. I was just crushed in the process of having to constantly suppress myself or my desires, what I truly wanted to do, and having to study, being a responsible student, things that I had zero interest in. And I really want to speak about self worth because I remember the toll that it took on my self worth, of my self image, how I viewed myself, despite the fact that I had the degree. I felt worthless because the degree did not have an application for me. So having spent 5 years, now I was facing, going to college again and maybe finally doing what I want. And so I want to ask you, Shelley, that sometimes even the admission process, I'm not even talking necessarily about my story, the admission process to college can be viewed, especially by teenagers, as reducing a young person to a set of metrics, a GPA, test scores, acceptance, rejections. And I know how hard they take it because I've seen many of them who got rejected and their world is crushed. So, what does that kind of an evaluation, I'm curious, especially for a teenager who doesn't know themselves, does to their self worth? And how do you help them hold on to who they truly are through that experience and just kind of get on the recovery path so they can now pursue something that they truly want and that they deserve?
So, through our program at College Ready, we start what's called See Our Future Now. And we
Mhm.
start and we gamify, we make it fun. We give them $1 million. What would you do with $1 million? And you know what you learn? If money was no object, they would do this. So, for the first time, you've taken away all of the reasons they can't do it, and you
Mhm.
start to see them open up to what is possible. Because most of the time they're feeling suppressed. I can't, I won't, I'm not good enough, and all of these things. If I give you $1 million, you're feeling like, wait a minute, I can do impact. I can make a difference. I am worthy. So that's a fun way that I encourage families to do it, is give you, not literally, but
Mhm.
the thought of, I mean, if you want, but the thought of $1 million. And then from there, we start to talk about the things that they deeply care about. What
Mhm.
brings them joy? If we lose sight of joy, what are we doing day in and day out? Not that they have to be super happy every single day, but what really are we striving for as we grow into adulthood? Does that look like being a parent? Does that look like being in service to others? What does that look like? And nobody ever asks them what that looks like, because I want to see and hear what that reaction is. And as soon as I see joy, I'm like, stop. What are you thinking about? What are you envisioning? How is this coming up for you? And then I'm like, what about this? And they're like, oh, no, 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 no. And they have they go all the way back. And I say, no, just stay here for a minute. Let's just stay where you are in a place of making impact, inspiration, making a difference in the world, living your passion, living your purpose. And it's the first time for many of them that they've ever done any kind of this exercise. From there, we then talk in details about what are their gifts. And
Mhm.
some students really believe they don't come with them. And so I have to help them to see themselves for the first time as, you're talking to a stranger. That's a gift. Not everybody can do that. And I simplify and I break it down to helping them see. So then when we talk about college, I help them understand that if you don't get accepted to a school, this is what's important to understand. They're doing you a favor. They know who is going to be successful at this institution. And if they're worried that you may not, they just made your life so much better. Because if you were to go to that institution and find out for yourself that you were not a good fit, talk about feeling really bad. Talk about feeling like you let down everything. So instead, look at it as they did you a favor, because there's 2,700 schools. There's a school for you. It may
Mhm.
not be the label or the name or the location that you were dreaming of, but I will tell you, after doing this 18 years, every student who comes back to me as a graduate of our program says, Shelley, I know you told me this, and I know that I fought you on this, but this is the perfect school. I cannot imagine another place that I'd rather be. So,
Mhm.
families, I just want you to know that because a rejection may feel heavy, I like to flip it upside down and really give them relief and help them to understand that, you know what, they just did you a favor. And guess what? Sometimes it has nothing to do with the student. If they're applying to a school like Cal Poly San Luis Obispo and they want to be an engineer, well, guess how 90% of the other students at that school want the same thing?
Mhm.
They can't have all engineering professors. They would have to fire the rest of the school. They're not going to do that. So it's just sometimes the sheer number of students who want to do the same major that keeps your student out of it. Not that they're any better or any worse, it just
Mhm.
happens to be the fit. And sometimes the school knows best because they know who's been successful.
Mhm. So important, but somebody oftentimes I feel like they need somebody who will communicate that to them as clearly as you just did. And the fact that the college rejection or admissions rejection does not define a young person's worth, because oftentimes it's perceived that way. At least that's how they take it. It really impacts their self-confidence ultimately. Another thing that I really wanted to ask you, Shelley, and you mentioned that in one of the examples that you brought, a parent said it's $100,000 and I'm not paying for it. In your book and in this conversation, even, you are making the case that financial anxiety or debt anxiety drives families towards colleges oftentimes that do not actually fit the student. What does it look like when fear of cost rather than knowledge of self becomes the primary decision-making force? And what does a family give up when that happens? What is lost in that exchange?
Wow. That's about a four-part question. So I'm going to give you a summary answer and we can dive deeper. But I
Mhm.
first want parents to understand there's four buckets of money. And when most parents think about college, they just think about the sticker price. But I
Mhm.
want you to think about when you go and buy a home, do you pull out the flyer and go to the realtor? Yes, I'm going to pay that. Or what about when you go to the car lot and you want to buy a new car? Do you put the price on the sticker on the window and say, yes, I'll take that? Very few people would not want to know the value, or is there a way to negotiate, or help me understand what that price is going to get me. But
Mhm.
yet, with college, families are like, I just, they have to go to this school and I'll figure out a way to pay it and I'll use my retirement and I'll go into debt. And then there's all this heavy guilt, and it doesn't need to be that way. There are four buckets of money. The first bucket is need based. If your family makes under $200,000, you could potentially earn a free education at one of the Ivy League schools. That's huge. Just because your family can't afford it doesn't mean you can't go. They have it right on their website. It's called a need base, and they will pay for housing, they pay for everything. Now, getting into an IV is a whole nother story, but the point being is money should not be the only thing that is a consideration. Then we get into the next bucket of money, which is institutional. Colleges are a business. And if you think for 1 second it is not, I want you to look at it like this. They need your student, your money, to stay in business. If there were no students, there would be no colleges. So here's how the institutional bucket works. If your student is applying to the right fit school, either as a reach, a target, or a safe, if that student is underqualified, they're lucky to get in. If they are overqualified, they're going to get some nice big funds if it's a generous school. If that student is somebody that that school values and thinks they're going to come to their school and make it even better, they're going to throw money at them. And so this is something that many people don't talk about. Colleges have endowments. Right now, Harvard's is $53 billion. That's a lot of money. They could put a lot of kids through school that didn't have to pay a dime. And while my son was at Harvard, out of his 12 roommates, every single one of them was getting some type of free money. Every one of them. So what does that tell you? If you're paying full price, I'm so sorry. That's what it tells me, because there's some money available that you didn't tap into. So then that's the institutional. So the colleges that you apply to are going to be generous or stingy. Very few of them fall right in the middle. They're either really, really gifted or really, really not. So if you need money to go to college, do not apply to stingy schools. It doesn't matter the name of them. They're still not going to give you $1. This we can tell you before you ever apply. Then you get to the next bucket of money, and that's merit. Either your student is good at acting or a sport or testing or GPA. They have some kind of gift. They're going to get paid for that gift. There's somebody who values that gift, who's willing to give them money. And then the next one is independent. There's a scholarship right now, $10,000 if you're a vegan. You didn't have to do anything. You didn't have to look at your parents' checking account, bank account. All they want to know is, are you a vegan? I often tease that I could be a vegan for $10,000 a year, but I don't really care for meat, so it's not that difficult. The reality is there is a scholarship for everyone. My son won the Coca-Cola scholarship his junior year, $25,000 a year, because he loved leadership. He didn't do anything different. It wasn't for college. He genuinely loved to lead other people to be the change he wished to see. And he got paid for it. So what does that tell you? There's a lot of money that you're not tapping into. Then there's financial negotiations and reconsiderations and getting off the wait list. I often tell parents, you could do your own taxes or you pay a CPA to save you money. At College Ready, we're very similar. You could read the FAFSA and the CSS profile. You can talk to your child until they're blue in the face. But the bottom line is, are they going to get it done? And do you want to be a part of that? That's what I think is important for families to realize. All of this is possible. My kids are no different than your kids. And I just want you to know that it is possible for every family.
Thank you so much for, first of all, sharing those 4 buckets. I was taking notes because I don't think I knew all of that information. And the fact that there are scholarships for vegans, I think that's definitely something new. It did not exist back in my days or even when my kids were college bound. So I think what you're speaking to, Shelley, is really getting this education around college admissions and by parents as well as the young people to really understand what is their path. And you're really helping them by educating them curate the path that is the most resonant, the most feasible, the most affordable, the most meaningful ultimately, that's going to serve the young person, their family, and the larger collective for not only those 4 years that they're in college, but way beyond that. And I really want to emphasize the importance of this type of education and the understanding of it, because, like I said, that this is all new to me. So this is incredible. And I think after this episode, most of my college-bound families will be seeing you, Shelley. But I also want to talk about the other group of families, which will probably be watching. Like you said, college is a stepping stone. It's not an end game. And not every student possibly belongs on that 4-year 5-year college path. How do you support a family genuinely open up to a possibility when you feel after you had the conversation with them, they came to you in order to get the support to get into the best fitting college? But you realize that's not for the child. How do you support the family to open up for the possibilities that maybe their child is not college bound, but what they will offer to the world is probably through a different avenue, which is probably much better for them? That's definitely the case for both of my sons. One dropped out, one never went. Both were brilliant students, K-12, but they chose college was not for them. And it was a really difficult pill for me to swallow. What is your process working with those families?
So the first thing I do is I listen. There's a lot to be said by just taking in what is going on in the student's mind and in the parent's mind. Again, the parent is concerned if they don't go to college, then what? If the student doesn't have another option to offer, the parent is feeling very anxious, as I'm sure you must have felt, right? It's
Mhm.
like, that was our plan. You just messed up our plan, and now I don't have a plan, and that makes me really nervous as your parent. So I do hear that. And what I want families to understand is we call it a plan A, a B, and a C. And if you're working all three plans, you're going to end up in the best place. So what does that look like? Plan A is the dream of the parent. The parent's paying for it. The parent's the adult in the room. The parent knows what's going on. They think they know what's best. So we're going to go with the parent as plan A. And that is, we think you should go to college. Okay, but what if? What if I don't want to go to college? Now we go on to plan B. I say to the student, so help us understand, what do you see yourself doing? I don't know. Influencer? I'm not sure. That's why I don't want to go to college, because I don't know what I want to do. Okay, well, have you ever had a part-time job, an internship? Have you ever written a research paper? Have you ever played on stage? Help me understand. It's okay if not college, as the parent is like wanting to hit me. But if you don't go to college, I need you to help me understand what we're going to do. And I say we, so they feel like we're a team.
Mhm.
And then they start to talk about, well, maybe I just want to do hair and nails. I really just love doing hair and nails. That's what I want to do. And I say, so why aren't you doing it? They're like, what? What do you mean? I said, you can go to cosmetology school when you turn 16. What are you waiting for? And they're like, what? And so it's helping them to not put off the reality of adulting. And that's what
Mhm.
it comes down to for a lot of students. If they don't want to go to college, it may be that they really just don't like academia. They
Mhm.
maybe just don't want to sit at a desk, and they just don't know what else is out there. So that's why I lean on community service, and why I lean on internships and work study and practice what they think they want to do, because most students come to the conclusion they are meant to do something, they just don't know what it's called. And so that's plan C. Plan C is, we're going to try these things, and we're going to do it systematically. We're going to do it in a time frame. We're going to do it with a plan. Because with a plan, your parent's going to be on board. Without a plan, it's going to be one fight. Let me help you skip that step. And they're like, yes, let's skip that step. And so the parent is like, okay, yeah, for the next 6 months, let's really step into what this could look like. And that is when both sides really first hear each other. And then we have plan C, which is, when we're doing this, how are we going to pivot, and how much time are we going to give it? For a musician, or right now I have an actress who really is making her parents crazy because she really wants to be in Hollywood on the big screen, but she's done nothing to prove it. And so the parent is like, okay, but how do you even know? Because you haven't even been on a commercial. They're like, help me understand. And so I said, great, go for the lead in the school play. That's a
Mhm.
very good first step. Well, she didn't get it and she was crushed. And I said, unfortunately, that's kind of what life feels like. We
Mhm.
don't always get to do what we want to do. And then the conversation opens up a little bit more and a little bit more and a little bit more. But the goal, if you're listening, parent, is instead of saying absolutely not, or I'm not paying for that, or you're not living in my house, or whatever I would want to say if that was my kid, think about, well, why wait? Let's do it now. You want to be a mechanic? Let's go work on cars. Let's go get dirty. Let's go do the thing. You want to be an electrician? Let's go get it done. And they're like, whoa. Wait a minute. And that is the first time they ever have that feeling of that is really scary as applying to college
Mhm.
because you just made it real.
Mhm. And once you make it real, that really brings the clarity about it. Am I going to act on it or am I just dreaming because it looks good when somebody else is on that big screen? So I'm curious, Shelley, when is the best time for families to start working with you? Is it the junior year, the sophomore year, the freshman year? And even before that, what is it that the parents can do and what does the young person can take responsibility for? So those are all the examples that you're bringing in order for them to test the waters, gain more clarity. So when they come to you, the planning is more intentional, more strategic, and it really gets them where they belong. They internally, understanding with their self-knowledge where they truly belong, where they want to make a difference, where they want to make a contribution to the larger collective, and where they're going to be happy and they will be making the living that they truly want. And the money conversation, I think, is so important. And thank you for leading it with that, especially when talking to young people, because for them it's an abstract concept. They never had to work for money. So for them to understand that there is a real cost of adulting, and this is what it looks like depending on what path you choose, is really, really important. So kind of going back to the question, when should they come to you and how they can prepare both parents and the young person before they come to you?
So, when it comes to life planning, and originally the name of my company was Life Ready, but nobody understood what I was getting at. So, I had to go to College Ready.
Mhm.
But to be life ready is really up to their maturity. If I had the perfect time for a family to come to me, it would be the day after they promote from eighth grade. Why? Because they are ready to step into high school, which makes a massive impact into how their future will unravel. Now, so eighth grade being the perfect time. They haven't made a mistake yet. Colleges haven't seen anything bad. Nothing has gone wrong. They picked the right. Everything is fresh. It's new. Anything is possible. Now, how do they prepare for that? The first thing, teach your child to love to read. I know it seems so simple. It really does, but I can't emphasize reading opens up the whole world to a student. And if they don't like it, make sure they're reading something they like, a magazine, a comic book, a newspaper, something that they can truly engage with. Because for the students who push on reading, they are saying, I don't want to learn. And that lack of not wanting to learn is going to hurt them all the way through. It's going to be harder to take challenging classes. Comprehension is going to be harder. Taking the SAT is going to be worse. It just makes for a lot harder. I have two kids who love to read and two who don't at all. And their paths have been so incredibly different. So that's an easy one. And how do we do that? Take your cell phone, put it inside of a book, and don't let them see that you're scrolling for endless hours. Have them see that you love a good book Have them talk to you about it or read a book that they like with them and have a conversation about it. I often told my kids when they were in bath time, that was my reading time. And so I would have a book open or a magazine open, and so they just saw me reading all the time. Well, that's what they want to do. Whatever their parent does at that age, that's what they want to do. So that love of reading will really make an impact for whatever they choose to do. And then finally, to put it all together, if you want scholarships, if you want college and you want scholarships, students can start applying to scholarships as young as fourth grade. So if you're waiting until their junior or senior year, you've just lost out on year after year of scholarships. That just makes me sad that you just didn't know that. So it really is about putting yourself in a position of knowledge. Why do you want to know what's important to you and where are you getting your information? If you Google this or you use AI, it's going to take you down the wrong path. It's going to tell you everything you want to hear because that's what it's meant to do. That doesn't mean it's the right path. So please know, be very careful when you Google it or use AI when it comes to your child's adulting, because it's going to make you sound like you're an amazing parent no matter what. At least it did for me. And I know I'm not perfect.
None of us are. And thank you so much for all those valuable tips and the fact that starting fourth grade scholarships become available. That's really it. All it takes is really education on the parent behalf in order for them to know how soon they need to start acting on this. Thank you so much, Shelley, for this incredible, very informative and insightful conversation. I want to ask you the last potentiality question. It's a traditional question in this podcast. If every young person entered adulthood having chosen a path that was truly their own, one rooted in self knowledge rather than inherited expectation or systemic pressure, what becomes possible for them individually, for their families, for communities, and ultimately for the world they will be shaping in the future?
Oh my goodness. You asked some great questions. So, the world would, just like I believe about community service, I just think the world would be just such an easier place to navigate. I think people would be happier. I believe that students wouldn't have the anxiety that they're under. I mean, life is life. It's never meant to be perfect. It's never meant to be without bumps and bruises. But I really believe that if you allow your child to fail and fail forward and learn from those mistakes and learn tenacity and learn that they can do it and that life's not going to be perfect and that it's okay, your child will be amazing. The world will be their oyster and your life will feel very fulfilled.
Thank you so much. And I agree with every single word. Your book is actually titled Send Your Student to College Without Losing Your Mind or Your Money. And the mind really comes before the money. And my feeling is that it's very intentional because the experiences that we have, all of us, are really shaped by the way we think, how much information we have, what we do with that information. And so I'm curious if that was an intentional choice, of the word order in the title, and what is it that you could add to it?
So it was very intentional because two reasons. If you don't get into college, you don't have to worry about paying for it. So that was one reason I put it in that order. The second reason is with my second child, we really went battles head to head. My first one did exactly what I suggested, didn't fight me on it. My second one truly thought I didn't know anything and that she had a lot more to share and offer than I did. And so I was losing my mind thinking, how am I going to navigate this with this child when she won't listen to me? And that's when I hired one of my consultants to tell her exactly what I would have told her. And she thought they were genius. And our relationship got better. And it was like I had my child back. And now she was getting this perfect conversation of exactly what I would have told her. And so, yes, it was about saving my mind. And then it was about saving on the money. But I will tell you, my two daughters, it was really hard to navigate this process with because they were adulting and maturing at the same time they said I was treating them like a child. So for every parent out there, I'm sure you'll have one of those conversations, but it really is to help you to know that you're doing the right thing. There's no doubt in my mind, but are they hearing it? Do they understand what you're asking of them? Or are they just hearing you say, no, I don't believe in you and I don't think you'll be successful doing what you want to do? That's the hard conversation.
Thank you so much for the depth, the honesty, and the wisdom, and really lived experience of 2 decades that you, and even everything that you've gone through with your own children that catalyzed the business that you have, has helped so many families and continues to help. I'm thinking, audience, if you have fourth graders, fifth graders, sixth graders, just reach out to Shelly now and start the process. So if any of our listeners or viewers want to get in touch with you to get your services or any type of consultation, where they can find you, Shelly?
So, for your listeners, I offer a complimentary discovery call. It's to get clarity. Are your paths aligned and how will you get there? And so it's 30 minutes with me and your family, and that's at collegereadyplan.info, info. If you are one of those people who just want resources just to gain knowledge, go to my website, collegereadyplan.com, and go to the resource tab. I give away so much free information. And then finally, if you're more of a do-it-yourself kind of person, both of my books are on sale for your listeners on Amazon. And for $4, you can have the framework that I built for College Ready to help your family navigate college without going into debt.
Thank you very much for sharing the resources. We will include all those links in the description box to this episode. Thank you, Shelly. This was incredible. This was very informative for me as well. And I have an 8-month-old granddaughter. We still have time before she goes to college. My sons are both grown up and they're doing their amazing things in the world. And that 8-month-old has been read to since day one she was born. And the way she engages with books in the last few months is unbelievable. So yes, teaching our kids to love reading is so important, and that really makes a difference in their life trajectory, the way it's shaped. Thank you once again for everything you brought to this conversation. Was there anything that you would like to add that maybe I did not ask about?
I just want you to know, parents, you've got this. I know it sounds heavy. I know it sounds maybe like challenging, but I just want you to know that you can do it. You've got them this far, right? Getting them over the finish line. I just want you to know it's a really wonderful place to be in celebration. When I just went to my son's graduation at UCLA and listening to the doctors talk about my child, it was like, really? That's kind of crazy. Just enjoy the process, enjoy the path, but just know you've got this.
Mm-hmm. Yes, you've got this. And every parent is doing exactly, and I think sometimes is trusting that what they do in attunement with their child is really the path forward. Congratulations to your son. That's an amazing achievement. And thank you again, Shelley, for everything that you do. This is so valuable for every single family out there, especially now in the age of AI. We need, I think, more guidance and more resources. Thank you for offering all of that to our audience today.
It's been my pleasure. Thank you all.
Thank you. And thank you for being with us today. I'm grateful to each one of you tuning in today's episode, and I sincerely hope you found it insightful and valuable. Please remember to subscribe to the channel if you haven't yet to never miss an episode. I will see you next time.